time, 5 people were shot in Garfield Park.
This happened hours after Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Chicago Police Superintendent called for federal help to stop.
Are now confirmed dead, part of that mass overdose from drugs sold on Chicago's west side.
West Garfield Park holds a record nobody wants. 1,000 shootings in just 5 years. Do the math, and that's a shooting every single 1.8 days. Not every week, not every few days. Every other day like clockwork. This isn't some war zone in a distant country. This is Chicago, one of America's biggest cities. And within Chicago, West Garfield Park stands out as the most dangerous neighborhood, period. To understand how bad things are, look at the homicide rate from 2014. It hit 160 deaths per 100,000 residents. The national average, around 4.7 per 100,000. That means this neighborhood experienced homicide rates 24 times higher than the rest of the country. 24 times. Let that sink in. The neighborhood sits on Chicago's west side, bordered by streets that might as well be battle lines. It's not a huge area, but what happens within these blocks affects the entire city. The violence here doesn't stay contained. It ripples outward, affecting neighboring communities like East Garfield Park and Austin. But here's what makes this even more tragic. West Garfield Park wasn't always like this. Back in the 1950s, this neighborhood was thriving. Families lived here, businesses operated, schools were full, the population was dense, vibrant, alive. Then came the decline. Decade after decade, people left. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Jobs disappeared, businesses closed, investment dried up. The exodus became a flood, and those who stayed behind found themselves in an increasingly desperate situation. Today, the poverty rate sits above 43%. Nearly half the neighborhood lives below the poverty line. Unemployment runs rampant. The infrastructure crumbles. Streetlights stay broken for months. Abandoned buildings dot every block, becoming hideouts and drug dens. The people who remain aren't here by choice mostly. They're trapped by economics, by family ties, by a system that offers no real way out. They wake up every day knowing that a shooting could happen on their block, maybe even hit their home. This is the reality of West Garfield Park. A neighborhood where violence isn't an exception but a daily expectation. What you're about to discover goes deeper than statistics. Behind these numbers lies a complete system of violence, territorial control, and institutional failure that turned an American neighborhood into one of the country's deadliest zones. The real question isn't just how many shootings happen, but why they keep happening and who benefits from keeping things exactly as they are. The Four Corner Hustlers run West Garfield Park. Not the police, not the city. This gang controls the territory with an iron grip that's lasted decades. The Four Corner Hustlers started back in the 1960s on Chicago's west side. What began as a small street crew grew into one of the city's most powerful criminal organizations. They didn't accidentally end up controlling West Garfield Park. They fought for it, bled for it, and eliminated anyone who challenged their authority. Their structure works like a business. At the top, you've got leadership making strategic decisions. Below them, enforcers handle violence and territorial disputes. At the bottom, young kids work as lookouts and runners, getting pulled in before they're old enough to understand the consequences. The gang's main money comes from drugs, cocaine, heroin, and increasingly, fentanyl. These substances flow through West Garfield Park like a river, generating millions in revenue. The neighborhood's location makes it valuable. It's a distribution hub, connecting suppliers with buyers across Chicago and beyond. But territory isn't just about money. It's about respect, power, and survival. In West Garfield Park, invisible lines divide the neighborhood into zones of control. Cross into the wrong block wearing the wrong colors or representing the wrong set, and you're risking your life. These territorial divisions get marked in ways outsiders might miss. Graffiti tags claim walls. Specific corners belong to specific crews. Even the way someone stands on a street corner communicates affiliation. Residents learn to read these signs early because not knowing them can be fatal. The gang doesn't just sell drugs, they control other illegal activities too. Protection rackets squeeze local businesses. Illegal gambling operations run in back rooms. Stolen goods get fenced through established networks. Every criminal enterprise in the neighborhood pays tribute to the gang or faces consequences. What makes the Four Corner Hustlers particularly dangerous is their willingness to use extreme violence. They don't make idle threats. Disrespect gets answered with bullets. Debts get collected in blood. Informants disappear. This creates a climate of fear that extends beyond gang members. Regular people, families, kids walking to school all navigate this reality daily. The gang's control isn't just physical. It's psychological, economic, and social. They've woven themselves into the fabric of West Garfield Park so completely that imagining the neighborhood without them seems almost impossible. Revenge drives most shootings in West Garfield Park. Someone gets killed, and their crew has to respond. It's not optional. The street code demands it. If you don't retaliate, you look weak, and weakness gets you eliminated. The cycle works like this. A shooting happens on Monday. By Thursday, there's a retaliatory shooting. That triggers another response the following week. And on it goes, creating chains of violence that can last months or even years. Some feuds between factions have been going for so long that the current shooters don't even remember what started it. Territory disputes spark another large chunk of shootings. A rival crew tries to sell drugs on the wrong corner. Maybe they're testing boundaries, or maybe they genuinely don't know they've crossed into enemy territory. Either way, bullets follow. These territorial shootings send a message: this block belongs to us, and we'll defend it with deadly force. Drug debts also turn fatal regularly. Someone owes money for product they can't pay back. First come threats, then beatings. Then, if the debt's big enough or the debtor stupid enough to stay in the neighborhood, a shooting. The violence serves as both punishment and warning to others. The weapons flooding West Garfield Park come mostly from neighboring states with looser gun laws. Indiana sits right next door, and its gun regulations are far less strict than Illinois. Someone with a clean record can legally buy guns in Indiana, then bring them back to Chicago for resale on the black market. These illegal firearms don't cost as much as you'd think. A handgun might run a few $100s. An assault rifle, maybe $1,000 or less. For gang members moving thousands in drug money, that's nothing. Some guns get passed around between multiple shooters, making them impossible to trace to any single person. Modified weapons show up increasingly often. Switches that convert semi-automatic pistols to full auto. Extended magazines holding 30, 40, even 50 rounds. These modifications turn already deadly weapons into something even more dangerous, especially when fired indiscriminately on crowded blocks. The actual shootings often happen fast. Drive-by shootings take seconds. A car pulls up, windows roll down, shots ring out, the vehicle speeds away. By the time anyone calls 911, the shooters are blocks away, ditching the car and disappearing into buildings they know like the back of their hands. West Garfield Park doesn't get the police presence it needs, not even close. The department assigns fewer officers per capita here than in wealthier, safer neighborhoods. That's not an accident. It's a choice that reflects where the city decides to invest its resources. Response times tell the story. Call 911 from a north side neighborhood and officers might arrive in minutes. Make that same call from West Garfield Park and you could be waiting 15, 20, even 30 minutes. By then, shooters are long gone. Witnesses have disappeared. Evidence gets contaminated or destroyed. The few police who do patrol the area face enormous challenges. They're outnumbered and outgunned. They know which blocks are controlled by which gangs, and they know that rolling through certain areas makes them targets. Some officers avoid the most dangerous streets entirely unless absolutely necessary. But it's not just about numbers. The relationship between police and community is broken, probably beyond repair. Decades of aggressive policing tactics, racial profiling, and documented cases of police brutality have created deep distrust. Residents don't see police as protectors. They see them as another threat. This distrust means people don't cooperate with investigations. Even when someone witnesses a murder, they stay silent. Snitches get stitches isn't just a saying, it's a literal reality. People who talk to police end up targeted by gangs, and they know the police can't protect them 24/7. The city's disinvestment in West Garfield Park goes way beyond policing. Schools have closed. The ones that remain are underfunded and overcrowded. Social services that used to exist have been cut or eliminated entirely. Youth programs that might give kids alternatives to gang life barely exist. Infrastructure decay is visible everywhere. Streetlights stay broken for months, creating perfect conditions for crime. Abandoned buildings provide hideouts and meeting spots for gang activity. Parks that should be community gathering places are too dangerous to use after dark. The judicial system adds another layer of dysfunction. Even when someone gets arrested for a shooting, conviction rates are low. Witnesses won't testify. Evidence is insufficient. Public defenders are overworked and underpaid. Cases drag on for years, and many end in plea deals that put violent offenders back on the streets quickly. Cook County jails are overcrowded, leading to early releases and lenient sentencing. The system has become a revolving door where the same people get arrested, released, and arrested again in an endless cycle that solves nothing. The Institute for Nonviolence Chicago operates in West Garfield Park with a different approach. Instead of police and punishment, they use intervention and mediation. Their workers, called violence interrupters, are often former gang members themselves. They know the streets, they know the players, and they know how conflicts escalate. When these interrupters hear about a shooting, they move fast. They find the victim's crew before revenge kicks in. They mediate. They talk people down. They offer alternatives to retaliation. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it breaks the cycle and saves lives. The data on their success is mixed but promising. In areas where they operate intensively, shooting rates have dropped measurably compared to similar neighborhoods without intervention programs. But they're chronically underfunded and understaffed. They can't be everywhere at once, and the violence overwhelms their capacity. Job training programs exist but barely scratch the surface of what's needed. Organizations offer skills training, GED preparation, and job placement assistance. The problem? There aren't enough jobs available for graduates. Even with training, a young man with a gang background and criminal record faces massive barriers to employment. After-school programs try to keep kids off the streets during the most dangerous hours. These programs provide homework help, mentorship, sports, and activities. They work when kids participate, but funding is inconsistent. Programs start and stop based on grants, creating no long-term stability. Community centers in the neighborhood struggle to stay open. They need funding for staff, facilities, and programs. Some rely entirely on volunteers who are dedicated but exhausted. These centers could do so much more with adequate resources, but those resources never seem to arrive. Economic development initiatives have largely failed. Plans to revitalize West Garfield Park get announced with great fanfare, then quietly die. Businesses are reluctant to invest in an area with such high crime rates. It's a catch-22, crime keeps investment away, but lack of investment perpetuates the conditions that fuel crime. The few businesses that do open often struggle or close within a year or two. Customers are limited because of poverty. Insurance costs are astronomical. Security concerns are constant. For every success story, there are 10 failures. What's missing is sustained, massive investment over decades, not just short-term programs that come and go. Real change requires resources on a scale that West Garfield Park has never seen. Until that happens, these smaller initiatives are like trying to stop a flood with a bucket. The families who've stayed in West Garfield Park for generations watch their neighborhood transform into something unrecognizable. They remember when these streets were safe, when kids played outside until dark, when neighbors knew each other and looked out for one another. Those days feel like ancient history now. Older residents stay mostly because they have no choice. They own homes worth almost nothing in today's market. Their savings, if they have any, aren't enough to relocate. Family ties keep them here too. Grandparents watch grandchildren while parents work multiple jobs. Breaking those connections feels impossible. Children growing up in West Garfield Park face trauma levels comparable to war zones. Studies show incredibly high rates of PTSD among kids in this neighborhood. They've seen shootings. They've heard gunfire so often it becomes background noise. Some have lost family members, friends, classmates. This trauma shows up in school performance. Kids can't focus on math when they're worried about walking home safely. Concentration suffers. Test scores lag far behind city averages. Teachers in local schools deal with behavioral issues rooted in trauma that they're not equipped to handle. Many kids here know they probably won't live to 30. That's not teenage melodrama. That's statistical reality based on what they see around them every day. When your future looks that short, planning for college or career seems pointless. Why stay in school when you might not survive to graduate? Some families do manage to leave. They save every penny, apply for housing assistance in other areas, and eventually get out. But leaving means abandoning elderly relatives, breaking up family units, and stepping into unknown territory. It's a painful choice with no good options. Those who left sometimes come back to visit and are shocked by how much worse things have gotten. Others never return, too afraid or too guilty to face what they escaped. A few move back after finding that other neighborhoods, while safer, are culturally isolating or economically hostile. Survivors of shootings carry physical and psychological scars forever. Those left paralyzed need constant care families can't afford. Others survive but live with chronic pain and disability. The medical costs alone can destroy a family financially, and that's if they had any financial stability to begin with. Every shooting creates ripples of grief that spread through the entire community. It's not just immediate family, it's neighbors, classmates, coworkers, everyone who knew the victim. And in a neighborhood this size, everyone knows everyone. West Garfield Park represents a failure of American society to protect all its citizens equally. The current approach of heavy policing without investment has proven completely ineffective. Arrests don't reduce violence when the underlying conditions remain unchanged. Locking people up doesn't work when there's an endless supply of desperate young people ready to take their place. Other cities have faced similar challenges and found solutions. Boston's Operation Ceasefire reduced youth homicides by more than 60% in the 1990s. The strategy combined law enforcement with community outreach, focusing on the small number of individuals driving most violence. It worked because it addressed both enforcement and prevention simultaneously. Oakland saw dramatic reductions in violence through similar comprehensive approaches. They invested in intervention programs while also holding violent offenders accountable. The key was sustained effort over years, not short-term initiatives that disappeared when grant funding ran out. What would it take to fix West Garfield Park? Honestly, billions of dollars and decades of commitment. You'd need massive investment in schools, job creation, infrastructure repair, and social services. You'd need police reform focused on building trust rather than militarized occupation. You'd need cooperation between city, state, and federal governments that's never existed before. The economic cost of not fixing it is already astronomical. Emergency room visits for gunshot wounds cost millions annually. Police resources devoted to this one neighborhood are massive. Lost economic productivity from unemployment and incarceration runs into hundreds of millions. Investing in solutions would actually save money long term, but politicians think in election cycles, not decades. The bigger question is whether American society actually wants to solve this. West Garfield Park's problems stem from systemic racism, economic inequality, and policy choices that prioritize some communities while abandoning others. Fixing it would require acknowledging these uncomfortable truths and committing to equity in ways that challenge existing power structures. Every day that passes without real intervention means more shootings, more deaths, more trauma, more lives destroyed. The people of West Garfield Park deserve better than becoming statistics in someone's crime database. They deserve safety, opportunity, and hope. Whether they'll get it depends on choices being made right now in city halls, state capitals, and Washington. The clock is ticking, and every 1.8 days, another shooting reminds us how urgent this crisis truly is.